The phone in Frank Reynolds' trembling hand felt heavier than it should have. His fingers, once strong enough to grip a rifle through the jungles of Vietnam, now struggled just to press the buttons. The numbers were burned into his memory, numbers that once meant something, numbers he hadn't dialed in years. The room around him was dimly lit, the cheap fluorescent bulb overhead flickering every few seconds. The nursing home smelled of antiseptic and loneliness. The heart monitor beside him beeped steadily, a cruel reminder that time hadn't stopped for him like it had for so many others. He had survived the war, survived the nights of gunfire and blood, only to be left here, dying alone. He let out a shaky breath and lifted the phone to his ear. The first number he dialed belonged to James Carter, his best friend from the war. James had once taken a bullet for him. That kind of sacrifice, that kind of bond, wasn't something you ever forgot. Frank had always meant to stay in touch. He had promised. But life got in the way. The phone rang and rang. He swallowed, no answer. He tried another number, James's son. Maybe he would know where his old friend had ended up. Again, no answer. Frank wasn't sure why he expected anything different. He reached for his address book, the pages yellowed and curling at the edges. He flipped through it, scanning the names. Most of them belonged to ghosts now. Some he had buried in war, others in time. The next name made his throat tighten. Michael. His son. Frank had let the distance between them grow into something impossible to cross. After the war, he hadn't known how to be a father. He came home angry, lost, carrying burdens he never wanted to talk about. He was too hard on Michael, too cold, too quick to retreat into silence or a bottle. And then one day, Michael had stopped calling. Frank had never blamed him. Still, tonight, he tried. He pressed the numbers carefully, listening to each ring, hoping, then voicemail. "Hey, it's Michael. Leave a message." Frank cleared his throat, but no words came. What could he even say? That he was sorry? That he wished he'd been a better father? That he was scared to die alone? The silence stretched, then the beep. Frank opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He lowered the phone without saying a word. He closed his eyes, exhaling through his nose. He was a fool to think this night would end any differently. The weight in his chest grew heavier. His hands trembled as he turned the pages again, searching. He didn't even know what for. Maybe just someone who might still remember him, someone who hadn't given up on him yet. And then he saw her name, Emily, his granddaughter. She had been just a little girl the last time he saw her, barely 5 years old, sitting on his lap, tugging at his old army jacket with bright, curious eyes. "You were a hero, Grandpa?" He had never known how to answer that question. Emily was older now, a teenager. Maybe she wouldn't remember him. Maybe she wouldn't care. But he had to try. His hands shook as he dialed the number. It rang once, twice. His heart pounded in his ears. Then someone picked up. "Hello?" Frank's breath caught. He hadn't expected to get this far. His throat was tight, dry, the words stuck. "Emily?" A pause. Then cautiously, "Who is this?" Frank's chest ached. Did she not even recognize his voice? "It's me, kid," he said, his voice raspier than he remembered. "It's your grandpa." Silence. Frank could hear faint shuffling on the other end, maybe a chair scraping against the floor. He pictured her, sitting in her room, phone pressed to her ear, trying to decide if she should hang up. "Grandpa?" she finally said. But it wasn't the excited, joyful voice he had dreamed of. It was wary, uncertain. "Yeah," Frank said, trying to keep his voice steady. "It's me." There was another pause. He could hear the hesitation in the way she breathed. "Why are you calling now?" The words hit hard. "Because I don't have much time left. Because I should have called years ago. Because I don't want to die alone." But he couldn't say any of that. Instead, he let out a quiet, broken chuckle. "Guess I just wanted to hear your voice." Emily was silent for a long moment. "You never called before." The guilt tightened in his chest. "I know, sweetheart. I know." He closed his eyes, gripping the phone like it was the only thing tethering him to this world. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." Emily let out a breath on the other end. Not angry, not forgiving, just tired. "Are you okay?" she asked, softer now. Frank blinked. She cared, even just a little. "I am now." The beeping of the monitor beside him was slowing. His body was giving out, but his heart felt lighter than it had in years. Emily didn't hang up. She didn't say much at all, but she stayed on the line, and for the first time in a long time, Frank wasn't alone. His grip on the phone loosened. His body felt lighter, his breathing slowing, the pain fading into something almost peaceful. The last thing he heard before the darkness took him was Emily's voice, soft and distant, like a whisper on the wind. "I'm here,"